Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris at Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friend Sam Clement. Sam, say hello.
John, how are you doing?
Sam, I'm doing fantastically. Do you know who's not doing fantastically?
I got a few guesses.
Well, I would say anyone that was voting or betting on Joe Biden winning the presidency in November.
Or Joe Biden himself.
Yes, probably not doing so well. Obviously, as the world knows, I think you'd have to be a shepherd in Chad or some such place, and that's an allusion to something from David Beckham, but you have to be a shepherd in Chad to not know that Joe Biden officially dropped out of the race. And after that, pretty much all the Democratic delegates, at least unofficially, swapped their support to Kamala Harris, current vice president, to be the new Democratic nominee. But I guess they're still going to have to go through all the parliamentary procedure at the upcoming convention in Chicago. Sam, am I right or wrong on that? I don't know.
You're right, and it's something no one's technically voted for her, no individuals, in the primaries. So, but she seems to be the nominee. She has enough delegates. I think at this point it's just kind of a procedural thing.
Well, let me ask you this one. Just because someone says that they will vote for Kamala Harris, since she was not elected, are they legally obligated to vote for her until they get to the convention floor? There's just so many questions I really don't know. Part of that is the reason why I think officially, unofficially, official, our posture here at the investment committee of Oakworth Capital Bank is, in terms of this sudden turn of events impact on the markets and the economy, it's still too early to tell.
Yeah.
While Kamala Harris will undoubtedly be the Democratic nominee for the presidency, she is not, I think, legally or officially yet. That do have to go through the convention on that. And also, even perhaps arguably to me, even more important than that, we don't know what the Democratic platform's going to look like coming out of this convention. Now that the pretense of, pretense, it's a strong word, but now that the pretense of moderate Joe Biden, kind of heading the ticket up.
Pretense is carrying a lot of weight there.
Yeah, all that type of stuff. Perhaps I shouldn't have said it like that, but without Joe Biden there, does the party shift further left? And as a result, our position is, we don't know legally who the nominee is going to be, nor do we know what the party platform is going to be. As a result, it's very difficult for us to have a prediction or make any concrete comments on exactly how the elections, the campaign is going to impact the markets until November, until we get finished with this.
Yeah, look, she is going to change. She is that idea of what Joe Biden's policies were. She is further left of those. And YouGov, I think it was, had her as, when she was still the senator, as I think the most liberal based on.
But I couldn't find that anywhere.
Yeah, taken off. But she was pretty far left in a lot of policies. And we always say the president gets too much credit in the good and blame in the bad, and it's pretty undoubtedly true.
Yeah,
there's too much.
Not always true, but almost always true.
At least, there's at least some credit or blame elsewhere, whether it's Congress or whether it's just strong consumers or the Federal Reserve or some exogenous event.
Yeah.
It's never 100%.
Politicians get too much credit for the good time, too much blame for the bad.
Right, especially the president. But with that being said, there's still some credit and blame that goes towards the president.
Well, yeah.
So it is important, saying that, and it is true, they get too much credit, they get too much blame. That doesn't mean they aren't impactful to the markets. And I think that's what I'm getting at, is her policies are going to change. She's talked about people in positions of power in the administration that are probably not going to be there if she was to get elected. So things are going to change, whether it's what we do with defense, whether it's the Treasury, whether it's, Secretary of State, what have you. Things are going to change. And you're right, it's just too early to know what that's going to be, how that's going to impact, what Congress is going to look like to determine what can get passed.
Yes.
It could all be a moot point.
There's so many questions, very few answers right now. Anything that we say really in this podcast, and more importantly, as we get more political about this in just a second, anything that Sam and I say here today are really just our opinions only, and not necessarily the opinions of Oakworth Capital Bank, and certainly not the official position of Oakworth Capital Bank, its directors, shareholders, stakeholders, anything like that. So just please understand that. So when I'm taking a look at Vice President Harris versus a Donald Trump, what I'm seeing is this could be a pretty tight race. I think a lot of people were going to say, hey, Trump's got this in the bag after almost getting shot, or not almost getting shot, almost getting killed, better way. And now people say, oh, he's going to run away with it. I didn't subscribe to that at all. And
it was too far away from voting, and with how short-minded people are.
It's too far away from voting, and it's just also, it's still Donald Trump. Everyone knows Donald Trump, and knows what kind of person he has been in the past, and probably what type of person he's going to be in the future. He's already been president once, so I don't know if that necessarily is going to change that undecided voter, and I don't think there are any undecided voters when it comes to Donald Trump. I think it's really just, round two with Joe Biden is just like, okay, do I vote for Biden just so I can vote for, not vote for Trump or what have you? All right, and that the first debate was so bad that I think that's where maybe people got, sort of like,
look,
it's Trump's now. Just that sealed the deal and all that stuff. Now Harris is in the race, Biden's not in the race, and I feel from the headlines, from traditional media outlets, all of a sudden, hey, it's a different ball game now. It's a different race. This is going to be potentially much closer than what we thought a week or two ago.
Yeah, it's going to be closer. I still think it's going to rely on a couple states like it tends to each election now. Probably Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, if I had to guess, are the states that could.
Not California?
Probably not.
Not Alabama?
Probably not.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
So, I do think it makes it closer. Some swing states, it's still just so early. This was such a rapid change. Everyone's talked about it since the debate. A lot of people said it's a when, not if kind of thing. They were going to replace him, and some pushed back on that, but nonetheless it happened. But we're just a few months away.
Which all seems mighty curious, but we're not going to go into that.
Yeah, but it's a few months away from when people are voting. So these polls, there's going to be a lot that comes out. The focus has been on her for a few days, really, or a week or two at most.
Well, I would tell you that the initial indications are that Harris has helped to shore up what might have been some faltering support in the African American community. Trump seemed to have been gaining some ground over where he polled in 2020. And apparently, from what I've seen thus far, it's been too early to make a determinate conclusion on it. Harris is helping that out. And I do think that her being, a woman of mixed ethnicity, I think part black, part South Asian, I guess, and then also being a female, for people who base their votes solely on identity politics, then that's, or identification, or demographics, that certainly should shore up those constituencies. However, I don't think that's necessarily going to be what takes the Democrats over the edge here. Traditionally, all of those groups which Kamala Harris represents have always been very left-leaning anyhow. No one thought that Donald Trump was all of a sudden going to win the majority of the African American vote. No one thought that all of a sudden Donald Trump was going to win the majority of the Asian vote. He wasn't going to. They were thinking he was going to maybe pick up a few percentage points. I think what I'm most interested in seeing is actually the convention itself. And normally I could care a fig about political conventions. I just don't care. However, I'll be real interested to see just how far left the party platform goes this time. That it's going to go further left, I think, is without debate. Just how far left it goes in some of its economic policies, in particular, is going to be really, I think, the key issue here. Because in 2020, there were a lot of suburban soccer moms, there were a lot of people that truly just voted against Trump.
Yeah.
Absolutely, truly voted against Trump. Thought Biden was almost this grandfatherly fellow that would keep the far left at bay, off the platform, and keep the Democrats.
Kind of felt like a known entity.
Known entity and what have you. However, if it is a Harris, who has traditionally been viewed as very liberal, and if the platform is increasingly liberal, Bernie Sanders type liberal, is that going to turn off that suburban, that college-educated frankly, Caucasian, white, whatever I'm supposed to say these days, soccer mom or professional that voted against Trump, is that if they move so far left that person just goes, ugh, I'm not going to vote for Trump, but I'm also not going to vote for this either, and I'm just going to leave President blank when I go vote. That's, to me, that's what I think is the real question coming out of this convention.
And I think the convention's important, but the other piece is just that the focus has not been on her until very recently.
Yes. Well, I mean, truthfully enough,
she was an afterthought in the political conversation.
Sam, she has been the most invisible vice president since Dan Quayle. I mean, that's my personal opinion. That's why I threw that caveat out there. But she was virtually invisible. I mean, for all intents and purposes.
And she didn't do great in the 2020 primaries.
No.
Focus was obviously more on her at that time. So I just think it's so interesting, this short timeline, and the Republican Party is going to hammer home her policies and the focus on her and gaffes and what have you. So I think a lot is going to change. I think the polls are going to change because people are going to they're just learning all over again. It's kind of starting over a little bit.
It is starting over, and it's starting over really with almost a clean sheet of paper on the Democrat side. Because now they don't have that figurehead in a Joe Biden that will project some measure of moderateness or middle of the aisle and what have you. And while he certainly didn't do what he promised in terms of unifying the country, quite the opposite, there was still that belief at that time that he might potentially be able to do so.
It felt like continuity.
Yeah, continuity.
I mean, it's been since 1976 that there wasn't a Biden, Clinton, or Bush on a ticket.
Well, there you go. And so there was some measure of comfort with Joe Biden. There's not that same measure of comfort with Vice President Harris, in my estimation. And then on the other side of the ticket, and just my opinion only, I'm not sure if Donald Trump could have chosen a worse candidate or a vice president.
I'm not sure what it gets him.
I'm not sure what it gets him, and anyone that's sober-minded, I would love to debate you on that if you feel otherwise. But if you take a look at it, I mean, okay, it shores up the very right-wing white portion of the electorate, which I hate to tell you, Donald, you already have.
And it's look, typically the vice president is chosen for a reason. There's some strategy behind it, whether it's a demographic you don't normally get, whether it's Obama chose Biden at least partially due to this consistency. I'm this young up and coming.
Well, I mean, truthfully, it was to assuage any persistent or lingering racist fears in the country that we were electing our first black African American. I mean, truly African American. I mean, Barack Obama's father's from Kenya. I'll say any sort of true racist fears that here we have, Barack's here, but old Joe from Scranton's going to be here as well.
But no matter what, there's always a reason typically for why you choose the vice president, and it's not typically just a policy thing. Trump chose Pence for the more traditional conservatives, I would say. So I just don't know I just don't know what box that checks that most of those people was kind of already voting for him.
I would say everyone that would have been voting for Vance would have been voting for Trump anyhow, which does take us to going back to the convention, not only the platform, but who, if it is Kamala Harris, and 99.9% sure it's going to be, if it is Harris, who is going to be her running mate?
I think it's probably Governor Shapiro out of Pennsylvania.
And you see, that would be a very wise choice in a lot of ways.
It checks boxes, but I think it creates some problems of how you answer this, because Israel and Palestine has become one of the issues for a lot of the left. They are pretty opposite in terms of their stance on that. Shapiro is pretty pro-Israel. I mean, he's up there with Fetterman as one of the top Democrats in terms of pro-Israel.
But the reason why Shapiro is a great call is because he's the governor of a swing state, clearly, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
He is a more moderate Democrat, which will give people some measure of comfort, and I think he helps to even out the ticket.
I agree.
And that could be, for Republicans, that could be your biggest nightmare.
And we said that's one of the big states.
Yeah, and so that could be the biggest nightmare, having Shapiro be the vice president.
It could be Roy Cooper.
Who?
Yeah, the governor from North Carolina. There's been talk of that. There's been talk of, what's his name in Kentucky? Bashir.
Yeah.
I think that's the direction. Possibly a Mark Kelly out of Arizona. Who knows? But I would say it's probably one of those four.
Well, if it is a Shapiro, that would just, or Bashir, or even a Cooper, it will go to show you that the Democrats are trying to win.
Those are four.
I mean, they are trying to win, and if it does happen to be one of those, they will win, or could stand a very real chance of winning. I would tell you this, and this is my opinion only, if they get someone who is even further to the left than those people, like a Gavin Newsom or what have you, a very polarizing person, that will be enough really to send Trump back to 4 more years.
Yeah.
Again, my opinion of it.
It'll be interesting with these. Basically, we're starting over with debates.
Yes.
I mean, as important as that one was, and really that was probably the driver to get Biden off the ticket, his gaffes and what have you, it almost doesn't matter anymore. That debate. I mean, that debate, the one takeaway from it was that Biden's probably not capable for 4 more years, or at least got the Democratic Party to kind of get on board with
I would tell you debates are still very important.
Yes.
I would tell you that debates, with Donald Trump being one of them, probably not all that important. He is such a polarizing person that you're either going to vote for him or vote against him, and probably not real interested or curious to hear exactly what his policy positions are. I don't know that many people that after his time in the limelight or spotlight don't have an opinion on him one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go through his platform probably isn't going to persuade someone to vote for him. I think with the debates with Trump, it was just, frankly, kind of morbidly so, how bad would Joe Biden do,
mm-hmm.
and would he do so badly that people wouldn't be willing to go vote for him just to vote against Trump? That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, but so now he's gone.
Now he's gone, and now it's a
fresh, it's a clean slate.
It's a clean slate, and
like
again,
that debate doesn't matter as much because the one action people took from it has happened. We're done with that. We're moving on.
Yeah, but if the party platforms things like what Biden's been almost secretly proposing, rent ceilings.
That works out well.
Those never work out. I know they're short-term popular and whatnot. Whenever you have a price ceiling on anything, it will lead to a shortage. This is just Econ 101. It's not a question of
guarantee.
It's not a question of if, it's a when, and it's a guarantee. You put a ceiling on rent, people love you for a short period of time. When all of a sudden they aren't getting their pipes fixed, the place isn't getting a new coat of paint, and the rent keeps going up 10%, and you're not. And new inventory doesn't come online, any of it. It's a mess. Just don't buy into that. But then also kind of secretly, they're pushing for a sharp increase in the capital gains tax.
Mm-hmm.
For all intents and purposes, taking it to basically where marginal income tax rates are. And Sam, you know how much I hate the capital gains tax. It is a capital control. It inhibits the free flow of capital across the financial system and keeps it from going to its highest and best use. As a result, it acts as like a ceiling. It freezes up. It acts like a ceiling on economic activity as people sit in stock that their granddaddy left them or what have you, and don't sell the money and move it into something else. Either they consume it or they invest it in something else. And same way, let's get rid of these things. And the quickest way to distribute wealth throughout the society is to get rid of the estate tax.
It gets locked up in trusts that are meant to pass on for 10 generations.
Without a doubt. You got all these
never be spent.
Dynasty trusts and all that stuff. It just keeps the rich richer for a long period of time. Get that money out there and be disseminated more readily. And so when I hear Joe Biden talking about getting rid of Trump's tax cuts and schemes that are due to expire at the end of 2025, I'm going, that's not going to work. We need to get all that money disseminated. Want those things extended, if not completely, estate tax eliminated. I also don't want to see the capital gains tax. I also don't want to see these rent controls. However, those are things that the average American probably doesn't care too much about. I mean, obviously, I help start a bank and and a wealth management shop, and chief economist or chief investment officer. I get a little bit more granular on that type of stuff. It's when we start talking about economic policies that really do hit the middle class right square in the middle of the eyes, where all of a sudden they're going, that's going to screw me because of how left-leaning it is. That's when all of a sudden I think this really opens up to a very interesting discussion.
I agree completely.
So, Sam, we've got a little ways yet until the election. We got the Democratic conventions coming fast upon us. I'll be watching a lot more of that than I watched of the Republican convention, because I didn't watch a single second of the Republican convention. So any of the Democratic convention that I watch will be more than Republican convention, and I'll be real interesting to see not only who the vice president nominee is going to be, but not just if it goes left, but just how far left the Democratic Party's platform is, but more particularly on economic issues. I think we are truly at an inflection point in our nation's economic history, whether or not we want to be far more, not necessarily socialist, but far more government controlled, or far more private sector controlled. And we are at that inflection point. I'll just tell you, the more control you give the government over the economy, by definition, the smaller the private sector becomes. And when the private sector becomes smaller, if that's bad news. If you think the private sector is a better generator of wealth than the public sector, which I happen to agree with. So, very real stakes here. And so let's see how it all shakes out. Hopefully it's not that worst case scenario, and hopefully it's not and hopefully we will be able to have somewhat peaceful campaigning, less divisive campaigning, and hopefully we will have two legitimate options for political party platforms by the time we get to November.
I agree.
All right. With that, guys, we always love to hear from you. Also, if you have any comments or questions, please, by all means, drop us a line. You can always email us at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com, or you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. If you're interested in reading more or hearing more of what we got to say or how we think, you can always go to oakworth.com, OAKWORTH.com, and take a look underneath the Thought Leadership tab for links to all kinds of exciting information, including links to previous Trading Perspective podcasts, links to our blog/newsletter Common Sense, and coming out really maybe today, maybe tomorrow, no later than middle of next week, our quarterly analysis called Macro and Market, which is particularly awesome this quarter. That'll be coming out, and you can get links to that as well. So with that, Sam, anything else on this hot topic?
That's all I got.
That's all I've got today too. Y'all take care.